Hi, I'm Shan Wu at the Undercolor of Law analysis of a historic Donald Trump executive order, historically bad. On March 6th, he did something really unprecedented. He tried to use an executive order to destroy the business of one law firm, and that law firm is named Perkins Coie. He described the firm in the executive order as though the entire firm's purpose was being some sort of political operative or consultant. We'll put up the executive order for you. We'll highlight a couple of parts of it. He begins by saying, quote, "The dishonest and dangerous activity of the law firm Perkins Coie has affected this country for decades. Notably in 2016, while representing failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton." All right, so he's still stuck on the Hillary Clinton thing after all this time. They actually did have some small role in something that had something to do with Clinton. But he goes on and on here in the executive order, and the real purpose of the order is he wants to hurt the law firm's business. This is part of what you've read about, that he's trying to go after law firms that he doesn't agree with. He also says that they're using DEI principles is racist, so that's another reason that he wants them to be punished. And how's he going to punish them? Well, by saying that any contractor who does business with the federal government can't use the Perkins Coie law firm as their lawyer. So the reality check, this is a 112-year-old law firm. They've been around for a lot more than a few decades. Started in Seattle, Washington, where I worked for a judge out there. A lot of friends of mine who became lawyers had worked for Perkins Coie. Major top 50 law firm, international, and they have done, of course, many, many things in their 112 years. And the thing he's particularly obsessed with was when they were hired back in 2015 for the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they were involved in this producing opposition research, that the so-called Steele dossier, and that's what Trump is still stuck on here. Now, it's important to remember that they have done many, many different kinds of cases. For example, they represented successfully Al Franken when he was challenging the vote results in his election, and they've done work for a lot of really big tech corporation issues. So it's not as though all this gigantic international firm with 21 offices in different countries only does Democratic political operative opposition research. That's probably a rather small portion of what they've ever done, but that's what Trump is, of course, obsessed with. I mean, firms like this are hardly monolithic in their views. I mean, they're extremely corporate oriented, and they are lawyers who have ethical obligations to represent clients' interests in a zealous fashion. Now, how they represent them, they're also bound by ethics, certain things they can't do. And importantly, yes, they have some discretion in who they choose to take on as clients and who they choose not to. And it's perfectly fine to criticize them for those choices. There are lots of times, particularly large corporate firms may take on clients that I think, that's kind of a scummy client. I wouldn't want to take them on. It's the law firm's business. They can make that decision, and it's our business. We can criticize them for representing interests we don't like. However, it is utterly illegal and wrong morally to use the power of the federal government to criticize them and to target their businesses. It's really just the usual dictator thing that Trump wants to do, which is sow fear of anybody opposing them. So if he wants to say, hey, if you're a business, even if you're a large law firm, if you take any position that I don't like, I'm going to use the power of the federal government to punish you. So how's he doing that here? Well, we've already talked about the fact that he wants to cut away their contractor business. He also wanted to get rid of their security clearances, if any lawyers have security clearances. So in his executive order, we can put this part up maybe, he says he wants to assess if in the national interest that you can't have any of these lawyers to have security clearances. So some of their businesses are going to include like Boeing. They've represented Boeing forever. Obviously, Boeing has government contracts. And that's his idea, which is, quote, to prevent the transfer, this is quoting his executive order, to prevent the transfer of taxpayer dollars to federal contractors whose earnings subsidize, among other things, racial discrimination, falsified documents designed to weaponize the government, the Hillary Clinton thing again, against candidates for office, Trump, and anti-democratic election changes invite fraud and distrust, the usual projection on Trump's part. Government contracting agencies shall, to the extent permissible by law, require government contractors to disclose any business they do with Perkins Coie and whether that business is related to the subject of the government contract. So first of all, that's somewhat intruding on an attorney-client privilege. The client can't be forced to disclose that. Second of all, the idea here is he wants them to then terminate these kinds of contracts. And the idea of that is now the government will get to decide who corporations do business with, who law firms can represent. And so Perkins Coie does not take this laying down or quietly, and so they file you guessed it, a temporary restraining order, our friend the TRO. And they demonstrate to the judge, they argue there's irreparable harm here, and they're likely to win on the merits, and they do win on the TRO part anyway. Federal Judge Beryl Howell in D.C. slam dunks on Trump and the DOJ. In court, the DOJ lawyer, a guy named Chad Mizell, argues to the government that it's frankly a terribly weak argument. He argues the president can determine that some individuals and companies cannot be trusted with the country's secrets. So what's that all about? I mean, not all the work they do is going to involve national security issues or security clearances. It's just a complete weak argument. I'm not even going to go into how convoluted it is, but he seems to have this idea like, well, maybe the government contractors know things about government secrets that are confidential, so therefore we can't trust this law firm with them. It just really goes no place. However, who is Chad Mizell? Because this is worth talking about for a second. Mizell is not some career prosecutor who litigates things on behalf of the government. I mean, Trump got rid of all those people already. He is chief of staff to Attorney General Pam Bondi. And before that, in the Trump 1, he served as counsel to the Deputy Attorney General then, Rod Rosenstein, during Trump number 1. Remember Rod? The guy who stopped DOJ from doing a full investigation of Trump's ties to Russia? The point here is that these sorts of positions, the chief of staff or the counsel to the Deputy Attorney General, they're usually not courtroom litigators. Sometimes I was on special assignment as counsel in Reno. I had a lot of courtroom experience. But someone who's chief of staff has to have a lot of experience at making the trains run on time. They're managing stuff in those positions. They're not going into court to litigate cases. Frankly, they don't have time to do that. And honestly, their backgrounds usually aren't coming from being a career or courtroom type prosecutor. It's oftentimes more of like being a legislative aide to a senator running those types of positions. However, it's possible DOJ at this point has no real courtroom career folks left, so they're sending out, or maybe they only trust the people at this level of political loyalty. So they're sending out the chief of staff to the Attorney General to argue cases. It's quite ridiculous if you had any experience with the hierarchy and the bureaucracy of a large government agency. The principal person at the head of the agency does not send their chief of staff to head into court to say something unless they got subpoenaed, to appear. And oh yeah, one other thing. He's married to a Trump federal judge. His wife, that federal judge, was rated unqualified by the ABA. Nonetheless, she got confirmed. And her most notable case, she struck down the original CDC order saying that people had to mask up on airplanes and public transportation during COVID. Now, the point here is Trump is making it plain that he seeks to use the power of the federal government and his office to punish who he does not like, right? And Judge Howell points this out, put up a screenshot for you. And she says to pursue a wholly personally vendetta in order to execute payback is not something which the government has a, quote, cognizable interest in. That's from some good reporting by Adam Classfield. We'll give you that link there. And that's the whole point. He wants to use the power of the government, abuse it to hurt anyone he wants to bully. And he also wants to use it to help people who are facilitating his bullying. For example,
I'm going to buy it because, number one, it's a great product, as good as it gets. I'm going to buy it because, number one, it's a great product, as good as it gets. And number two, because this man has devoted his energy and his life.
Now, maybe Tesla really needs some help because its stock price is plummeting. People are protesting at dealerships. They seem to associate the car with Musk. Big surprise. So back when he signed this executive order attacking the law firm of Perkins Coie, Trump described it as the following, which was, he said, put up a screenshot here of his quote, "This is an absolute honor to sign." All right, so let's fix that for you. Fix it for you. All right, that's it for now. Thanks again for all the replies and comments. It's really helpful to get, and there's a lot to follow, but we're trying to follow along with you. So look to talk to you soon. Thanks.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.